Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a sci-fi movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie simply called The Day. So The Day is a post-apocalypse sort of sci-fi film, really more akin to the films like The Road rather than things like Mad Max. So the central premise is really around 5 survivors of the apocalypse that have kind of banded together, 3 guys and 2 girls. One of the guys is kind of sick with something like pneumonia or something like that. And it's essentially their sort of struggle to survive this post-apocalyptic world. Now we have a prologue at the beginning of the film showing one of the survivors, and he's at this point in time he's got a wife and a child, and he's played by Shawn Ashmore. And we see him try to sort of loot a house basically to try and find supplies. And while he's in there, his kind of wife gets sort of carried off by some sort of unknown assailants along with his baby. So we're sort of told that there's kind of these sort of predators type people, or some sort of predator out there. Basically, we don't know quite what it is at this point. And the 5 survivors find like a disused old sort of country home, really. And now we find that they end up getting trapped there and are sort of under siege basically by a sort of a group of ultimately what we learn to be cannibals. And this ultimately is what they were afraid of initially, was that there seems to be this sort of large number of now cannibals sort of roaming the sort of countryside and trying to pick off basically other people. So I won't go too much in regards into the plot of this film because I don't want to sort of tell you who dies and who doesn't, etc. But there's a few things I want to talk about. So when I first sort of watched this film, I didn't really know much about it. All I knew it was really a sort of a post-apocalyptic, sort of sci-fi thriller or whatever. Now it's obviously a relatively new idea. There's no like flashy effects in here or anything like that. We don't know what's happened to the, why there was apocalypse, what's actually happened. We're not given any information like that. All we know that it's roughly around 10 years ago, and times are very hard. There's not a lot of people left. I get the impression. Now, when I first sort of watched it, I thought it was going to be more of a character study in regards to how these sort of people are reacting in this sort of type of environment, rather than a kind of like an action film. And I guess the first third of the film, it probably is a lot more like that. And we kind of learn to sort of we get to know the sort of characters and how they're surviving in this sort of world and how they're sort of rationing out things like ammo and food and whatnot. And then when they actually get to the house, and it actually kind of changes pace, and it actually becomes more of a kind of a siege film than anything else. Well, these sort of group of survivors are trying to sort of defend this sort of old sort of country house from these sort of cannibals that are invading it. Basically, it turns much more into an action film, and it's quite a violent. Well, siege film. It reminded me a little bit of Assault on Precinct 13 sort of style of films that you've seen in the past. But it was quite an exciting, action film in regards to that. So really, I mean, I only say it's sci-fi in the very fact that it's based in a post-apocalyptic setting. But really, that's the only real sci-fi element to that, is we know it's in the future at some point. But apart from that, there's no futuristic things in it at all. So there's that basically. So it's kind of part thriller, part sort of action film. Now the acting, I would say, is normally fairly pretty. It's pretty decent across the entire film. I wouldn't say there's any sort of particularly bad acting. I have to be honest with you. I do have a few issues with it. And this is going to get a little bit nitpicky and possibly a little bit spoilery. Now the whole sort of antagonists in this film are these cannibals. Now we're told that it's been 10 years since this apocalypse happened, and what it seems to have been, there seems to be most of the people seem to be cannibals. So we see these 5 survivors, and they're the only sort of non-cannibals that we see. We didn't see anyone else. And there are some cannibals at the beginning that take Shawn Ashmore's wife and kid. They're travelling. They say they're travelling 20 miles a day, so we know that they travelled quite a distance. And this is important to another point that I'm going to come on to in just a second. So they come to this house and they're sort of attacked by this other sort of big group of cannibals. And now, when I say cannibals, I'm not talking like these are sort of like the crazy cavemen types. This is like an organised group of people who have chosen to be cannibals. Now, I guess my main issue here is that I don't know if I've missed something in this show, but it just seemed a little bit stupid to me that there's all these like clans of cannibals. And they have a kind of brand on them, and the idea being that they won't eat any other cannibals. The agreement is once they're out, they have a brand. Basically, they're sort of protected from being eaten. And we see some sort of like burials, so we're guessing that they're not being eaten. But I'm thinking, if these people are so organised that they can have a sort of a national social network, that they can't farm crops and they can't hunt animals, they have to resort to cannibalism. It just seemed a bit stupid to me. I thought that surely there must be some animals available to hunt, and if they're that well organised and still fairly civilised, surely there's got to be other options to cannibalism. To me, I just thought that was a bit ridiculous. But fair enough, if you're going to have cannibals, in these sort of futuristic films, we've seen it before, but I just don't think they would have this sort of big organised group that looks like it sort of spans the entire nation. They must have. I mean, assuming there's no communications in this world, but they seem to have these like this idea that the cannibals won't attack other cannibals, but they must have met to have agreed that. In which case, surely this is an organised party. I mean, I can't believe that almost this entire nation seems to have just turned into cannibals, where there's so probably better options to try and rebuild the world. That, to me, I thought was stupid logic. Depending on how kind of picky, like I said, this is a relatively picky issue that I have with it. But to me, it's the first thing I thought. I thought, if I was expecting cannibals, you're kind of expecting crazy kind of like wild people rather than a kind of unorganised person. I mean, the leader of them's obviously got a very sort of stylised like mohawk and stuff like that. So he's he dresses in kind of like a suit jacket and stuff like that. And he said, well, he's worried about his style and stuff, and he's got enough time to sort that out, but he can't farm some crops. But there you go. So that was my first issue with it, and that's kind of, I guess that's my major issue with it. This one, that just to me seems such a sort of a major flaw in this film's logic to me. And these we as I say, we're told these guys have travelled miles and miles and miles, so we know that there's a huge network in regard to that. So that was it. There's a couple of sort of small minor points that kind of bugged me as well. I mean, I guess the other sort of relatively major one. There's one when they are being attacked. One of the girls manages to sort of get out of the house, and she's kind of like being attacked by the young daughter of one of these cannibals, and that scene to me almost looks supernatural, because this girl, and this is shot in the daytime, so. But she seems to come out of nowhere and she's only got this little pointy stone, whilst this girl's, she's a full-grown woman and holding like a 2-foot machete. Yet this sort of young girl seems to sort of manage to sort of keep stabbing her and kind of almost disappearing into the brush, and then sort of coming out again and kind of like disappearing again, so you can't see her. And it looks like she's a predator or something like that. And to me, that was just such a different change of the gritty realism that it had been going for. That sort of, again, that scene of the film very, very much took me out of it. Now, you could sort of say, oh, well, this girl has been, she's been brought up in this kind of like this world, and she must have learnt these skills. But let me tell you, she's got a brother who is roughly the same age, who has no skills, because he literally walks up to the house and gets shot through the window when he sort of tries to poke someone through it. So he blatantly hasn't had any training. So why would he not have any training? And this woman, this young girl, not have master training. And also, I'm sorry, but the strategy of simply running up to and I'm not talking about the kid here, the kind of the leader of this sort of bandits or the cannibals, his strategy is simply to sort of run up and attack this house. Which doesn't seem like the best strategy to me, to be honest with you, because they kind of quite easily get picked off a lot. I mean, surely it would be better to try and make a distraction and kind of like maybe try and sneak in or something like that. But instead, these cannibals are pretty much orders just to sort of run or even walk up to the house and kind of just try and pull off the boards of the house, and they kind of get easily picked off. So there's no way that this guy is this kind of master sort of military ninja-esque guy who's training his daughter to be this sort of phantom, because his strategy, quite frankly, sucks. So again, quite a nitpicky issue that I have with it. But to be honest with you, the actual film is, it's a quite a gripping film, and it's quite entertaining as long as you don't mind the sort of the dour and kind of like almost negative overtones that it kind of has. But to me, there was some issues in regards to its internal logic and some of this, just this one particular scene. I will say the very, very final scene of this film kind of makes up for it, because it's quite a nice little decent scene. The very last shot of this film, I thought was pretty awesome, in a kind of weird, twisting, sick way. But anyway, I would give this film, it's probably better than average. I'm going to give this film a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they're my main two issues. I do have a couple of other sort of minor ones as well. But anyway, let me know what you thought about it. Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.